Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where, for the past few weeks, Hollywood has been showing you how it's done. But this week, they decided to remind you how not to do it. Wow, yes, while Disney, Universal, and even Paramount continue to feast on Thanksgiving leftovers, there's still stuff in the Tupperware. Let's go, baby. Sony and Warner Brothers are freaking starving over here. Oh, my goodness. Thankfully, they both have some hits. They had some other hits this year, so that's going to keep them okay. But they've also had some clunkers, although who hasn't in Hollywood these days? Wait a minute. Venom 3 is a hit? It sure is, baby. Oh, my goodness. That sucker has clawed its way to number 9 for the year so far. Not even just number 10. Number 9! Oh my goodness. And that's worldwide though, where 70% of its box office comes from overseas, by far the highest overseas percentage of a movie's overall box office in the top 10. Doesn't matter! That's the way it works. Money's money. Although again, from a studio's perspective, they get a little less of that money, but it still looks very nice on a chart. All right, so what's Sony gonna do, right? I mean, you might think the answer is very easy, but this is a lot of money. And let's discuss. So according to Variety, Sony has just now figured out that audiences do want to see a Spider-Man in these movies. Apparently, they felt that fans didn't want to see Tom Holland in a non-MCU movie, when I think that's actually just Tom Holland who doesn't want to see Spider-Man in a non-MCU movie. He's like, this Homelander meme is perfect for that. So Sony, you make Into the Spider-Verse, a very popular series of animated movies about how there's a gabillion spider people. Pick one! I would select Mr. Andrew Garfield, right? We're going to get one of those little claws, right? Ooh, where is he? I'll take whoever I pull up, but I'd be aiming for Andrew Garfield. That's kind of what negotiating is like. Funny. That's funny. You're aiming for Andrew Garfield, but he slips through the claw because he wants too much money or he has some other project he wants to work on. So you actually accidentally end up grabbing somebody else. That's okay. Maybe it's an unknown actor who blows up and becomes a big hit. All right, so anyway, that's just, as long as you're playing the game. Put some quarters in the machine, Sony, or, tokens or whatever. Now, by the way, speaking of Andrew Garfield, what a missed opportunity for some massive fan credit online if he had been willing to do Actors on Actors with Sebastian Stan. That hasn't been confirmed. That's an assumption, but I think it's a pretty good assumption that the internet has made. Although Ryan Reynolds has a long history of employing his friends, so I wouldn't blame Andrew Garfield for wanting to get in there. He's like, maybe Spider-Man could team up with Deadpool. I mean, people want another Deadpool. Actually, that's a great idea. Maybe Andrew Garfield's brilliant. All right, I hope that Andrew Garfield pitched that. He's like, hey, I don't know any other spider people who are friends with Ryan Reynolds. Do you? I don't know any other spider people who got Ryan Reynolds into Actors on Actors. Do you? Time for a little quid pro quo. Thwip, thwip, baby. Get me in Deadpool too. I love that idea, actually. All right, so yes. I don't think Sony is done making their own Spider-Man movies and shows. They're doing Spider-Noir because it's their only franchise. Anytime you're like, stop it, Sony, go take a gander at their top 10 movies of all time. It's just a wall of Spider-Man movies. And Venom, the first Venom's even in there. So now you can understand a little bit where Sony's coming from. But wow, what a slap in the face this year for them. Twice, actually. They got hit in the face twice. What's it going to take for them to learn this lesson? I think they might have, again, this is the one that finally they were like, wait a minute, do you want to see Spider-Man in these movies? I think they must just be covering. Is anyone really that dumb? It's hard for me to believe. Sometimes people will do that. That's actually a pretty funny trick. You just pretend to be, you're just like, oh, it didn't occur to me. Right? So maybe hopefully that's what the Sony execs are doing. They're like, what? Ooh, I'm sorry. We'll fix that. All right. So anyway, so funny. Sony had hoped that they would have their own Jumanji or Aquaman, but instead they got a combination of Black Adam meets Aquaman 2. You got to specify which Aquaman that you want. All right. So when they're rubbing that Hollywood wishing stone. All right, I guess it's a wishing comic. They're like, give me that Marvel comic. I don't think you're rubbing it right. All right, so are they reading the comics? Right? But we'll talk about that in a moment. But I also want to ask you, do you think if Sony had kept this movie on its last release date, which was Labor Day weekend, do you think it would have done a little bit better? I'm not sure. Part of me thinks maybe it would have. It would have been before Venom, but it still would have been after Morbius and Madam Web. I think it should have stuck with its original date. Although I don't think it's that. We'll talk about it. But, we'll talk a little bit about, Kraven. But, wow, three Spider-Man-less movies in a single year. That's nuts. So, Sony, do you talk to comic book fans? But, that actually might be not a good idea. Let me explain. So I've been thinking about it because I'm like, this is nuts. What's going on? What do we do here? We get to the bottom of stuff. So comic book fans are actually used to stories where side characters and villains get their own title, right? And are presented sometimes in a sympathetic light because it's from their perspective, right? How do you think we're able to buy 6 to 10 comic books a week? That stack doesn't make itself, and they're not all, just like when I reviewed Kraven, I explained to you, when you buy 6 to 10 comics a week, they're not all bangers, all right? Like there's the top pack. It's like the top 10 of the box office. The movies at the very top that debut at the top are the big ones, but then there's the middle of the ones that, are moderate performers, where actually Kraven is to a degree. But that's how it works. And then at the bottom, you're like, but I like that character, so even though it's crap, I'm going to buy it anyway. Boy, they really get me with comics. I buy like every week I buy the comics because they come out, but I don't always get to them, especially because a lot of them aren't so good these days. I have so many unread comic books that I've paid for but haven't read on my iPad. I mean, wow. It's incredible. I wish that there was the thing that if you haven't read it, like after 2 or 3 weeks, you would get your money back. It would just disappear and go back because, they can tell if I read it or not. But then I guess there'd be no comic book business. If you didn't have to pay for the comics you had never ended up reading, I guess that's the downside of digital comics. Physical ones, I always worked my way through the stack. I get a snack on comic book day. It was a beautiful thing until that fateful day that I went to the comic book store and I pulled out one from the shelf and it had a footprint on it. I always used to get it from the back because in the front were the ones that everybody had already read a little bit and perused because they didn't want to actually pay for it. So I wanted a freshie. But it had a freaking boot print on the front of it. This is the last day I ever went to a comic book store. But I do miss the ritual. All right, so anyway, we are open to a movie like Kraven, right? I think that's why some of us like it. 72% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is not bad. I just think it's very popular hate on the movie right now. Gets a lot of clicks, gets a lot of views. I suspect that down the line, people will be like, Kraven wasn't so bad. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be a hit or even I don't even think Sony's going to make their money back on it. But I think by the time it trickles down to Netflix, people will watch it. So I think it's the casuals and the casual comic book fans, who've only seen previous movies, who've only watched the animated series, who've only heard of the comics, but never actually they're not actual comic book readers. So they don't get the nuance. But they don't get the nuance, that we don't have time or money and space to educate people on this. It's not going to work. So while, say, Clayface could totally have his own 4-issue miniseries, but by the way, I looked into it. He's actually only had single issues. He's never even had a 4-issue miniseries. That tells you there's always the person who's like, well, maybe it's time. Yeah, but here's the thing. It's a lot cheaper to make a comic book than it is to make a movie or a streaming show. A comic does not cost $40 million. I mean, you've heard the stories. Comic book talent is woefully underpaid, except for only the 1% of the talent. So, they're churning them out over there. There's not a lot of money in making comics for the most part. So maybe, James Gunn, it's a bad idea to make a Clayface solo project, movie or show. Let's just put our business hats on. The peoples, they don't want it. They don't want it, no matter how good it might be. I might enjoy it. You might enjoy it. Doesn't matter. It's not making any money. It's not working. So yeah, they said that Clayface is only going to cost $40 million, but, as I just said, more than a comic book does. And I would be really surprised if Aaron Taylor Johnson was able to land Bond after this, particularly because he doesn't already have a contract in place. As we've discussed before, you're like, then how is Jared Leto still working? Well, he's in Tron Ares because he signed that deal so long ago, not only before Morbius was released, but before so many movies were released. So sign those contracts when they present themselves because you don't know what's in your near future. All right, it's Jared Leto. Jared Leto unraveled quite quickly. Remember when he was an Oscar winner? All right, so, okay, Warner Brothers, your turn. Zazie, I know you're trying to drive the price down for Warner Brothers, chopping it up into little bitty pieces, like more purchasable pieces. But wow, can you sell a car with a couple of flat tires? I mean, let's see. I bet Zazie could sell a car. I bet he could sell a car with no tires. All right, so he's like, they're in the trunk. You inflate them back up. So you're driving your IP into the ground, man. Although, to be fair, a lot of studios are having trouble with IP these days. But not, you know who's having the least trouble with their IP? Your most likely buyer, Universal. War of the Rohirrim managed to please some hardcore Lord of the Rings fans as its audience scores weren't in the toilet, but they ain't exactly on the kitchen fridge either. Whew. Lord of the Rings has been having a tough time lately, right? I mean, maybe it's just the IP. Sometimes IP gets into a weird space. Just ask Sony. But with Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh as executive producers here and their longtime creative partner, Philippa Boyens, even more involved, this is particularly ouchy. Although Mortal Engines didn't get them kicked out of Hollywood, when you make 6 movies where each of them makes $1 billion or close, it's very hard to get kicked out of Hollywood. Just ask Kathleen Kennedy. Oh, everyone's taking it today. Pew, pew, pew. All right, so let's hope this Gollum prequel, by the way, doesn't end up like the Solo prequel. That didn't even occur to me, but now I'm worried about it. You start to see the patterns emerge. That's why you got to pay attention. All right, so with this and War of the Rohirrim tanking, the trades are saying it's ladies' night at the multiplex right now. So guys, what the heck are you watching? What are you doing? What are you doing? Some of you must be sneaking into Moana 2 and Wicked. Are you? It's a safe space. You can talk about it because look at these movies go. Moana 2 had a great hold in its 3rd weekend, although it's potentially about to run smack into a brick wall with Sonic 3 and Mufasa. Sonic 3 in particular. And here is the boy content, by the way. It's like being in the toy store almost with the different aisles. Although I believe I saw a headline recently that they've decided to do away with gendered toy aisles, which I actually am in favor of. Because, you don't know what toy somebody's going to like. I always used to walk down every single aisle. So anyway, boy, I miss toy stores. What a shame. Technology put them out of business. It was great. But anyway, so I think that is obviously going to have some kind of effect on Moana 2. But I don't know how much it's going to affect Wicked. Oh, let's talk Wicked. So talk about continuing to defy gravity. It never gets old. I mean, some of you might be like, I'm tired of it, Grace. Oh, well, Wicked's making a lot of money. Wicked really is the new Barbie in so many ways. Even down to some of you complaining about it all the time. But, I mean, why do you care that a lot of us are having fun over here? It's not hurting you a movie. We're not asking you to come over here and have fun with us, although you're welcome to. All right, so after last weekend's bigger drop, I was starting to get nervous. But just like Moana 2, these movies strengthened. I feel like a meteorologist. They picked up steam. They're going back up to Category 4s this weekend. And despite Moana 2, Universal's managing to stay ahead of the Disney flick, but just domestically. Worldwide continues to be a problem, ironically for a studio named Universal. But it continues to be a problem for Wicked. It's like the opposite of Venom, actually, where 70% of its box office is domestic, and that's equally unusual. It's usually about 60-40, 40% domestic, about 60% overseas. I mean, there's a lot more overseas when you look at the map. All right, so all Wicked has to do is top the the first Mamma Mia's $611.4 million to become the highest grossing musical of all time. But I don't know if it's going to be able to do it, to be honest with you. Real talk. But no matter what, though, these are great numbers, largely because John Chu kept that budget at a reasonable level. Also, there might be some gold in Wicked's future, although, speaking of Barbie, it might get Barbied. Still, Wicked also shows that holidays are a great time to release a musical, following The Greatest Showman and last year's Wonka. How far can Wicked fly? Well, this coming weekend is again boy-centric content, and then after that, there's just small awards contenders and mostly limited release starting Christmas Day. Nosferatu might take a small bite out of Wicked. Nosferatu's quite good. And that will go wide on Christmas Day. But remember, Wicked is also about to kick off its sing-along shows. So, or they invite you, they want you to sing. They're going to put the lyrics up on the screen. I mean, some of you already, of course, have them tattooed on your brain and your heart and your soul. But, other people will be able to come in and sing along as well. So it could play all the way through January, to be honest with you, like till the end of January. Universal loves to run to digital. They love it. They pioneered the digital play. But for big titles, they're willing to wait. So we'll see how long they wait for Wicked to hit digital. And then after that, of course, ultimately, it will go to Peacock. All right, so as for the rest of the box office, Gladiator 2 has fallen way behind the other two movies. Domestic, particularly, but also worldwide. Paul Mescal don't care, though. He's about to be a Beatle, if rumors are to be believed. That's actually very good casting across the board for this. I'm not a Beatles fan, and I was like, 4 movies about the Beatles. And then I saw this casting, and I was like, maybe I'll watch it. Also, because I just like to Complete Unknown so much. My review for that will be coming out this week. I'm like, all right, I'll watch a movie about the Beatles. And even though Red One is already under your Christmas tree, or Christmas tree adjacent on your television on Prime Video, it's still managing to do business in the multiplex. I finally checked it out at home, and I was really enjoying it. Santa has quite the security team. But then when they got to the Krampus stuff, I checked out. It lost me. I was like, oh, here comes the cell phone. No, I've lost interest in your movie. I think when I watch movies at home, I really need to remind myself to do this. I need to put my phone in another room because it's too tempting. This is how it happens in movie theaters. But, the shame, and also I'm not going to do that. That's just so horrible. But although some movies in the last year or so have been so awful that I've been like, want to take my phone out so bad. Why don't we just leave? It's very hard for me. I don't know. That's a good psychological question. Why don't you just get up and leave? I don't know the answer myself. All right, so Interstellar. Wow. I don't think I can keep saying Nolan is the new Spielberg because he's clearly in a class by himself. I mean, what a following. He's like A24 in human form if it made lots of money. Although A24 is slowly but surely getting there. Pivoting to digital, starting with Nielsen for mid-November, it's a Christmas miracle. The Penguin charted. Although it sounds like I'm saying something else. Yes, it's only on the acquired chart and it's extremely low down, but at least it's a sign of life. It's here, it's alive, oh yay. However, after the Sony debacles, as in plural, as we've just been discussing, DC, don't continue down this road. You survived. You got a lot of nominations for this show. You can hold your head high. Get out of here, man. Nobody wants to see villain solo projects. Maybe it's the Joker. Don't fall for it. For every Joker in Venom, even the sequels for both those movies were awful. So that Warner Brothers is like, are you saying I could potentially make Joker 3 and it will rebound a little bit? No. Stop it. All right, so, but it's very nice. It's a nice little bit of respect for Penguin fans. And the show was great. Again, especially if you're a comic book fan, we're used to just seeing the villain by themselves. And it was a great comic book miniseries. I very much enjoyed it, but I wouldn't do it again. And I loved it. I advocated for continuing with it, but as the picture continues to come further into focus, we're done. On the overall chart, Amazon has another hit. They got a real obvious formula over there, and they are working it. As expected, Deadpool and Wolverine hit Disney Plus strong, although interestingly, not as big as Inside Out 2 when that debuted. That is very interesting. But you know what? Tomato, or bag of money. Disney has some very big hits this year. Bob Iger's like, and that's why they just named a building after me. They did. They just did name a building in New York after a Disney building after Bob Iger. All right, so on the originals chart, Paramount Plus is also building some hits with a surprisingly similar strategy to Prime Video, and that's reach out to conservatives. Although Paramount Plus should really just be called the Taylor Sheridan Network. He's like the conservative Ryan Murphy. I think that's a perfect comparison. I would love if they maybe did some kind of weird crossover. Now I'm actually in love with that idea. All right, it's sort of sad to see Arcane so low down on this chart, but hey, at least it is charting, which is much more than pretty much all other animated series can say. And with movies, quite the drop-off after Deadpool and Wolverine. Streaming is just not making the most out of the movie space. On Netflix's charts for just last week, Lindsay Lohan continues to dominate, meaning she has many more Netflix movies in her future. An original animated Christmas movie, That Christmas, from UK rom-com king Richard Curtis, had a very nice debut. Religious film Mary as well. is right behind it. You know, movies on Netflix are strong this week. 1 through 4 have over 10 million views apiece. It's usually the top 2 that are in double digits. Then with shows, Coleman, we'll come back to this chart. I noticed The Grinch. Just hold on. Put a pin in it. Then with shows, Coleman Domingo rose to first place. Fantastic for him. A nice commercial hit to balance out all the noms he's getting for Sing Sing. And Keira Knightley has a modest hit with Black Doves, although, again, we'll see what, this is just for the first couple of days. We'll see what it does in its first full week. But she's using her the PR campaign for this to bash pirates. She might have had a bad experience, but I don't understand this, this ongoing trend. It's been a while now. Remember Anne Hathaway? Where actors, it seems particularly actresses, bash the projects that put them on the map. Just don't talk about it because they're beloved by a lot of fans and you in that project. And wow, I'm surprised at how low Sabrina Carpenter's Christmas special is on this list. And it's not something that's going to go week to week. It's a special. This was its time to shine. I saw a clip of it on social media and I thought it was excellent. Although, is that how we all watched it? Clips on social media? She did have a joke about how Netflix said all she had to do was trend. And she did trend, so maybe she has fulfilled her requirement. Although this would now make me a little nervous about having her as Disney's live-action Rapunzel. Some of you are saying she should be Rapunzel. It's kind of like Disney's answer to Ariana Grande as Glinda. And I thought that was smart until I saw these numbers. And there's Arcane, just about to drop off the top 10 after a solid 5 weeks. They waited too long between seasons, but I would definitely bring back a new Arcane series. They got to stop taking this long, though, between seasons. For live-action shows, too. On digital with Apple, you not only see both Grinches here, but bring back that Netflix movies chart. Both Grinches are here as well. What excellent timing for Jim Carrey to announce during his Sonic 3 PR campaign that he would be willing to come back for the Grinch now that he no longer would have to maybe wear the makeup, which was excruciating, horrible experience for him and his makeup artist. You can Google that. But he thinks maybe he could do it via motion capture. I don't know if it would be as effective, to be honest with you. I don't know if the comedy would translate. I'd have to do a test now that I think about it. I was talking to somebody about this. I would give him 20 million tops, large chunk of the back end. That's what I'd be willing to pay. Because here's the thing. I mean, by the way, Jim Carrey just wants to work because he's also says he'd be willing to do another Mask. Be careful, Jim. Oh, it's not been great for sequels lately. But at the same time, The Grinch is doing such big streaming numbers in every iteration, year after year after year, topping all the other Christmas movies where there's some strong competition. So I would make Grinch too, right? I'd be like, all right, I'll make it 25 million if you're willing to do the makeup again. We promise it's better now. It's easier. The glue is not so sticky. All right, so I think I could wear him down. And based on the Sonic movies, Jim Carrey is still hilarious. I think he'd be great. He's got a bunch of makeup on his grandpa, so it's clearly better. All right, Venom the Last Dance is number 1. Whew, people sure love Tom Hardy as Venom. By the way, did you see this? He just narrated a calm sleep story, a short one. It's like about 16 minutes. And he's both Eddie and Venom telling you a good night story. I laughed myself to sleep. It was fantastic. And Heretic continues to do well on digital, especially with all those noms that Hugh Grant is getting. All right, so as for this coming week, it's 1 week till Christmas, which falls on a Wednesday this year, which will therefore create a mega weekend. It's like one day before Thanksgiving would be, so it's quite the weekend. And since that will be all after Christmas, you got nothing but free time until New Year's. I bet people go see a lot of movies. But first, this weekend, when you're still planning for Christmas, do you have any plans to go to the movies before the big day? Sonic 3 and Mufasa hit theaters, as does Baby Girl. That is a very adult film. More adult than Poor Things. I just want you to be prepared. I think they need some other kind of rating to really, I think people you just don't want to surprise people like that. I liked this one though. I didn't love it, but I liked it. And also The Brutalist opens in limited release. Loved that movie. My review will go up this week. And again, as will my review for Complete Unknown, which has sneak peeks on Wednesday in IMAX. Most of them are in fact sold out, but you might as well check near you. Maybe you can snag some tickets. On digital this Tuesday, there's Nora, a very adult film, and Small Things Like These. And on streaming, Tyler Perry has The 688 on Netflix on Friday, and I think that looks very, very inspiring. Then with shows, The Simpsons has a holiday special on Disney Plus on Tuesday. Well, on Thursday, more Virgin River. People love this thing. It's such a huge hit for Netflix. Well, it's here. The unexpectedly controversial Beast Game launches on Prime Video also on Thursday, getting the jump on Squid Game Season 2, which will hit Netflix the day after Christmas. Also, Max has its own game show based on Friends coming out on Thursday, hosted by Whitney Cummings. That game show I just checked out the trailer to see what it was about. It seems surprisingly mean. I was like, are you celebrating Friends fans or making fun of them? I think that would have been a note if I were a producer. I'd be like, pass this to Whitney. All right, and that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what are your viewing plans for the upcoming couple of weeks during the holidays? Have you made any plans? You going to wing it? What are you thinking of seeing or watching? Share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.